Welcome to Play It By Your Rules, the podcast for those tired of living by somebody else's script and ready to live and lead on their terms. I'm your host, Maggie Rombach, coach, speaker, and strategist. I'm here to spark a little rebel energy and leave you with a sense of possibility. Each episode, I'll talk to leaders, adventurers, experts, and changemakers who found their way. Some loud and bold, others quiet and intentional. You'll walk away with fresh insights, inspiration, and practical tools to chart your next chapter. If you're craving more freedom, flow, and fun, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to Play It By Your Rules. I'm Maggie Rombach, your host. I'm super excited, as always, to have another amazing, inspiring woman here with us today, Shivangi. So with no further ado, I give you right the word, Shivangi. What is your mission? What are you up to? Tell us a little bit more.
Hey, Maggie, it's so good to speak with you and welcome everybody who are listening to us. My mission is to help and support women to become more of themselves, to own more their voice, to own more, their way of being in the world, and to feel proud about it and to celebrate it.
That's wonderful. So you do that in many ways. You're wearing many hats. You're a speaker, you're a mentor, you do many different things. So what is the red thread throughout it?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I wear many hats. I started a corporate career, then moved into entrepreneurship, started my own leadership consulting company, started a nonprofit, wrote a book, and I think the red thread across many things that I do is helping women in particular, but also people in general, because I do a lot of my commercial work, which is gender agnostic. And it's really helping people identify what are their true strengths. What is it? Who is it they were before the world told them what it is to be successful, what it is to be liked. So it's really about identifying your true strength, something that gives you energy, and then capitalizing on that energy and capitalizing on that gift that you have and bringing it to that world, right? So all my work across executive coaching, mentoring, be it with Thrive with Mentoring, my nonprofit, but also I mentor a lot of young students, MBA students, I mentor executives, I mentor business owners. All of that is always about what is it that makes you come truly alive. And then once you know that, then you can bring that to the world, because the world really needs your gift.
I love that. And that really connects with my idea behind Play It By Your Rules, because what I very quickly realized, if you want to play it by your rules, you first have to understand what your rules are and what you need and what makes you unique. And only then you can play it by your rules. So that really resonates with what you're up to in terms of helping people to find this magic formula or their uniqueness. Sounds absolutely amazing.
Maggie, that's really interesting when you talk about playing it by the rules. A lot of sorry, by your rules, yes, by your rules, not the rules, but your rules, and that's an important differentiator. For me, it has always been, I, as a leadership coach and trainer, I have been certified in many different psychometrics, maybe around 10 of them, right? And these are like personality questionnaires that you answer and gives you an elaborate idea of who you are and what you do. And right from the beginning, my profile always came as somebody who does not follow any rules. and maybe that's another way to say I create my own rules. So that's interesting. The name of the name you have chosen, played by your rules.
It's amazing. So I'm an addict of all these tools as well. And actually, I recently did one. It's called PCM. It's the one that's used for NASA astronaut training. Don't know if you heard about that one. And that's where I discovered that I'm actually a people pleaser who now moved to rebel energy. And that just so resonated with me. So what is your favorite tool? If you could pick one, or one where you got the most amazing insight, is there one tool that worked best?
Yeah, so there is a complex tool that I have personally liked a lot. But it is so complex that it really requires human narration, etc. And that is about, it's based on Robert Kegan's theory of adult development, and the whole idea of immunity to change. So why are we not able as adults and as intellectual people to not change the way we are, so it's all about how do you close the knowing doing gap. You know what you should be doing, but you're unable to do it. So but it's quite a complex tool. The tool that I would recommend, that's easy to use, easy to understand, high face validity, and I use an awful lot, is something called as a DISC. It's very well known, DISC, everythingdisc.com. I think that is a great entry tool, and I use that a lot in the work that I do with people.
That's great. Thank you. And I'll look up this other tool. That sounds fascinating too, but yeah, maybe a bit too complex. So, because you actually work a lot with highly skilled immigrant women. So did you see any unspoken rules that these women would kind of hit the wall or run up against, and particularly when they're stepping into leadership roles?
Yes, I mean, that is really the topic. As you know, I've been doing a lot of work with women. I mean, Thrive with Mentoring, my nonprofit, has existed now more than 8 years. And I have encountered hundreds, if not thousands, of women who have various challenges which are linked to gender, but which are linked not just to gender, but the upbringing and the social conditioning. And a small subset of that is then the women that thrive, that platform that I founded attracts, is these high skilled immigrant women. And I got very interested in that particular subset because I'm a high skilled immigrant woman myself. I moved from India to Switzerland 25 years back, so that was a long time back. And in the meanwhile, I feel as if I'm integrated in the Swiss society. But at many levels, I will always remain a high skilled immigrant woman and an Indian, right? I always say I'm Indian at heart and Swiss in my mind and my functioning. And I think that's going to remain within me, right? But I got very interested in this particular profile because I started encountering them a lot in my own coaching work of senior leaders who were at a particular stage in their life a bit stuck, despite having all the potential and having proven themselves, etc. And then it also is a subset of the women that Thrive with Mentoring tends to attract in a few countries, not in all, but in a few countries, we tend to attract these high skilled immigrant women. So I got very, very interested in that particular subset. And I started interviewing women who were high skilled immigrant women, but who were very, very successful. They made it to those CXO roles, they founded those businesses, etc. And I interviewed around 60 such women to identify, so what are the patterns and what are the narratives that they are telling, themselves, which are helping them to encounter the more stronger narrative, which is sort of almost accepted by people, because high skilled immigrant women face a very interesting, what I call as the unholy trinity, So they have all the problems of what all women have, which is gender. Then to top it that, they have ethnicity issues, and ethnicity issues may or may not be associated with color. I mean, I speak about high skilled immigrant women, let's say in Switzerland. Of course, they are the women who are coming from India and Asia and Africa, but there are also women coming from, Eastern Europe and Russia and maybe even, developed countries like the UK or US. So it's interesting. The challenges are compounded by color, but they exist even for high skilled immigrant women, which may not have the color issue. And the third one, which I think is much more prominent in some countries, we see the narrative so much stronger in the US, for example, and that is the anti-immigration bias, right? So this is the unholy trinity, right? You have gender, you have ethnicity, all the cultural implications of the ethnicity, color, culture, language, food, and then you have the anti-immigration bias. So it's like a perfect storm that these women find themselves into. And intersectionality is like compound interest, it sort of adds on, and you never know what you are really dealing with, which bias is most prominent here. Because of course, there are other biases that you might be dealing with when you're entering a leadership role, which is how people actually, in their mind, and I mean, there's a lot of studies around that, what are the unconscious biases? When we look at two people, let's say a white man in a suit versus let's say a woman with curly hair and brown woman, And if you say, who is the leader? Who in your mind intuitively seems like a leader? That's very deep. That goes very deep. And even though we work on these things, like, helping people become conscious about these kind of biases, to work through them is a longer process, right? And that's where I wanted to tell stories. That's where I wanted to, shift the narrative. That's where I wanted to tell about what then works to be addressing this. And that was then the genesis of my book, Wonder Woman, right? Because this book is really about asking you questions. It's really about mirroring, helping you see the mirror. I have so many readers who came back to me and who said, oh my God, I can really see myself. And when you see yourself, that then makes you feel, oh, this is a valid point of view and I'm not alone. And, this is a shared point of view. And whenever you feel that you're a part of a community, then you have strength, and then you do not feel so isolated and alone, and then you can do something about it, right? And for me, in any case, that book is a starting point. I am going to be starting Wonder Woman circles and probably retreats and training programs, etc. Just coming around to do all of that because the book is recently published and it has created all this energy.
Wow, that sounds amazing. So we'll talk about Wonder Woman a little bit more in a second, but there are two things that just came up listening to you. Because I think there's another bias. I used to have a baby face bias, because I looked really young for the level of role I was in. So that was my bias for many years. And now I'm hitting towards 50. So now I'm realizing probably soon I'll enter on the other end of the age bias, where suddenly I'll be one of the older ones in the room. And so I just think age is another bias that is part of the equation, one way or another, probably also more in terms of perception. Did you see that come up, or is that not so much?
I saw that so prominently in one of my senior level coaches. It was not just the baby face. She did have a very young face, but it was the voice. The voice, if you have a squeaky voice, and we've seen that also in some political leaders. So I have just by nature, I have a low bass voice. And the low bass voice is usually associated with authority and leadership. And I was not aware of this, right? But I had this voice when I was 25. I had this voice when I was 30. And I think if I enter a room and if I speak in a particular way, people project authority on me just because of my voice. And I saw some of the women, and I actually do some voice coaching with this particular coachee of mine, because she might say words which were full of strength and gravity, but the voice sort of was opposite to that. And that really made it difficult for people to imagine her in a people leadership role, let alone a enterprise leadership role, right? So that is the work that we started doing. And this whole idea about being young, feeling young, and dressing young versus being, and by the way, this is not just gendered though. I also worked with, with a man, an Indian man, who had the same issue. He was like late 40s, and he looked like somebody 20 something, right? So it's not related to gender. The age bias is an interesting one. One is how you look and how you sound, but the other is then that people are actually aware of your experience, right? And especially, we live in Switzerland, and I'm now, as a part of my nonprofit work, but also my coaching work, it's a very expensive country, and people are really moving all these jobs that could be done remotely outside of the country. And the age bias has become so prominent now because it's a well-known factor with our social system that people and organizations can afford to have two younger people instead of one person who's more experienced and on the other side of 50, right? So it's challenging and it's real, and it just adds on to all other biases.
Wow, so that's something else that comes up now. So I'm really curious these days, exactly for what you described, because also I'm based in Geneva, and there's a big wave of layoffs going on. So you have already the bias of age for many people, and then on top you have a very saturated job market. So where do you go? So in the people you coach or in your mentorship circles, did you see women or people in midlife taking on more of a portfolio career, like more fractal work? Or what are the new models? Did you see any new models emerging where these highly skilled people actually made it to their advantage rather than getting trapped in the age bias?
Yes, so I see two different things happening. And by the way, what's happening in Geneva is happening in Zurich, is happening in Basel. Okay, so I know that the people in Geneva, because I speak with a lot of people and we have a chapter in Lausanne, of Thrive with Mentoring, that there is this feeling that, oh my God, Geneva is very difficult. But then I'm like, okay, try Basel, try Zurich. Is not very different, because the pharma industry let go of a lot of people in Basel and the finance industry let go of a lot of people in Zurich. So similar, right? Yes, I think not by choice, but a lot of highly skilled people, and it's not just women, have needed to reinvent themselves. And they were a part of large corporates, usually with large teams and large budgets, and that's not a reality anymore. And like you say, the market is quite saturated. It is a buyer's market. The supply is much higher than demand, which means that everybody is now trying to find how to reinvent themselves. And for some of these people, it has meant leaving the country. I know most people don't want to, but they would go to South Europe, or even back to India or wherever, right? Like really finding a way to be in a place which is growing and expanding rather than contracting, and reducing, which we are seeing in such a small country that we live in, right? The other thing is I see a lot of people, like you say, developing into the portfolio career, which then means you go and teach in universities. You maybe start a little bit of a smaller, coaching, mentoring practice. You might do some remote work for people who are organizations which are not based here. You might end up with some kind of consulting work, etc. Right? And then the third thing I'm seeing people doing is then finally pursuing their own entrepreneurship and their own causes and their own ideas, right? And it really depends. Like some organizations have interesting models, So I heard of a large organization, a large pharma organization, offering the 50 plus people to retire over 5 years. So reduce their time of work, but they would be paid, right? So slowly they are being eased into early retirement. It's still early retirement because, as you know, the retirement age keeps increasing. So still probably could work for another 10 or 15 years, but you're eased into it rather than suddenly being told no job, find for yourself. And I think those are the sort of models that organizations also need to, adopt and embrace. But it does seem at the moment that a lot of people are not planning for it as proactively as they could. And everybody that I mentor and I coach, and even you might be in a well-paying job and you might not be, probably because so many people are just afraid of the next round of reorganizations, right? But of course I do work with people who are not tensed by that, and I still tell them, always think about what is the other thing that you would want to do and that you want to do despite having your job. Like don't collapse your entire professional life into this single job and single identity, because I've faced that myself. Now, mine came before the big rush, because I think the big rush is sort of post-COVID in the 5-6 years. My reinvention came almost 10, 11 years back, right? And then the fortunate thing, if I can call that, is that 100 other people around me were not going through the same thing. So there was not as much competition and there was a longer time period to reinvent myself. And I think here now it's like you just have to do it. You have to like build a plane and fly it at the same time. And I think the sooner you accept that reality, the sooner you stop feeling like a victim, the sooner you stop thinking that things are going to change or even put your head in the sand, the better it's going to be for you. The better that you can work with the mindset.
So I really deeply believe in two concepts that come a little bit from our humanitarian work, but I think, so we work in the field, we talk a lot about exit strategies. That even when you build a project, you already think about when and how to exit. And when you apply that to your personal life, there's also this whole notion of having a plan B. So I deeply believe that we all should have exit strategies and we all should have a plan B. And at least every time in my career I had a plan B, I was actually even performing better in plan A because I was less afraid. So you're not so clingy to your job because if something happens, you already know what you'll try next. So it stresses you a bit less. And the other thing I really love about what you're just explaining about this slowly retiring out, because in a way, this is kind of fractional work. And I don't see that happening so much in Switzerland yet. But in a way, it is fractional work because that means people are temporarily employed in still senior roles and they buy themselves time to start looking at something else, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the mindset of even if you're employed, thinking that you're a consultant to the organization. Because I think what happens is, and I think all those words like, employer branding and emotional engagement with organizations, etc., they have reduced quite dramatically in our context, So the sooner you accept that you are actually a professional employed to bring a particular set of skills, and you're not emotionally wedded to the organization, you're not emotionally, involved, and you stop expecting loyalty towards yourself. I mean, all of these concepts were very important when the jobs were stable and people were staying in a company for 30 years, but they have become less relevant in today's world, and we have entire generations who never even experienced that, right? They are like mercenaries. They come and they do their work and they move on, and they don't know anything different. So I think that it's really a huge mindset shift, and the sooner we accept that this is how the world has changed. It's not even something in the future anymore. It's happening, and it has happened. But I see still a lot of people struggle with that, especially people who have been, who have had tenure in an organization. The longest I ever worked for an organization was 7 years, right? Otherwise, I've always worked. I worked in 4 different organizations, always 3, 4 years. 7 years was the longest, and I found it even with 7 years very, very challenging to leave that organization. I was headhunted into another one, and to like really explain to myself, how and why I would leave, and it's still the best organization I worked for. So I know the feeling. I feel that, that how when you feel like emotionally involved with an organization and with its leaders and with its people, I know it's difficult. But that same organization just let go of thousands of people, and that's just the reality, And I don't think people are doing this to be mean to you or something. It's like I think we need to like depersonalize the situation now, because a lot of people get caught into the narrative around, like how I was mistreated and how my boss didn't stand out for me. And just accept that it's economic reality. And it's not about you and your boss anymore. Entire teams with the bosses are getting laid off. So really about looking, I like what you talked about in terms of plan B or the exit strategy. We always think about that when we found businesses, right? When we found business partnerships, etc. We're thinking about, okay, we are in this together, and we give a lot. I mean, I faced that again reluctantly at that time when I decided to take on a role, one of my last role actually, more not as an employee, but as a consultant, like an external, but being put into roles which were only held by internals. And the internal organization was getting all of these reorganizations, right? So suddenly, first I started with a team, then I had 2 teams, then I had 3 teams, But I wanted to leave, and that was really very, very clear in my mind. But all these teams and all these people, they were, because of all the reorgs, they were into this total victim mode, and the company is not what it used to be, etc. And because I had this perspective that I have a limited time period in my mind that I will work with this organization, even if whatever the organization threw on me, right? It usually threw on me larger responsibility, larger teams, etc. I was not emotionally wedded to the organization. And that's interesting because, like you said, I became very effective because there was no victim mode in me. I was just looking at things at their face value, and I was trying to do my best and trying to bring in productivity and and not losing all my energy, being, feeling sad about myself. So, and that's also the reason I got thrown into like, bigger and bigger teams and bigger projects, because I was not getting bogged down by the reality, which was really, very depressing for a lot of people who didn't imagine that their life would be different. So I think there is a huge strength in identifying that you are somebody of free will. And instead of, blaming your situation, you walk into the situation with open eyes, and you think about your exit strategy. I think you should do that, because we don't live in a world anymore where anybody is offering us 20, that you will be in this company for the next 20 years. It's just not the reality anymore.
This is so deep. And that brings up, so I've really gotten into mindfulness. And in mindfulness, you call that total acceptance. You just got to accept the reality. And that is actually really freeing. It's not easy because, of course, we're attached, especially if we really love our work or we've been there for a long time. It's scary. You go through the whole phase of the change curve. I mean, all of that, I think we all felt it, and it's not easy. But if you manage to get to the point of total acceptance, like you say, just accept that's the new reality, then you can start looking forward. Because else you're just in victim mode, as you say, and
yeah, it works at so many levels. I mean, you reminded me of Tara Brach, who's a mindfulness teacher, and she talks about radical acceptance, right? And she even talks about that in terms of trauma and healing. But I think it is radical acceptance of there's this weird sense in us. We feel as if we can control our world. We feel as if we can control our circumstances. And I am so deeply aware that all we have is the illusion of control. we can actually not control anything. The universe does not care, really does not care about what we want. It goes on in its own way. And the sooner we accept, and I'm not saying don't have the illusion of control, because otherwise it's very challenging to sustain ourselves, right? But know that it's the illusion of control rather than really controlling it, right? So yes, put the mechanisms, do the work. But in India, we have this very deep work of philosophy called as the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita actually talks about that, right? It says that you do everything possible to achieve the results that you want, but you make yourself free of the results. You're not going to be dependent on how those results are going to be. So you still show your sense of agency, and you still are present, and you're giving it your best shot. But you're not going to wed yourself and wed your success and wed your identity to what those results are. Free yourself from the results. And the more you can integrate that philosophy in every part of your life, right? Not just your job. It might be with your relationships. It might be with your friendships. It might be with your businesses. It might be everything. The more you can integrate that, really, right? Because I think a lot of us can understand it cognitively, but to live that, that's the journey of a lifetime.
I love that. I look at that concept. That sounds really great. So let's get a little bit back to your book, because one thing I was also wondering, listening to you, I don't know if you follow the work of Erin Meyer on cultural mapping, cultural differences. So she wrote a book. It's really interesting. So she basically identified several, let's say, factors of cultural differences in terms of hierarchy, in terms of communication style, like all of those things. So when you did the research for your book, and I think you also in your book, you talk to women, it's basically a lot of stories and then also some practical tips coming out of it. Did you see that coming? Did you see how the cultural differences impacted those women adapting to the place they moved to?
Yeah, and yes, I have come across the work of Erin Meyer and many other people, right from Hofstede, who was sort of the grandfather of the cultural code, and there's somebody who also writes about the talent code and the culture code in organizations. The culture is at many levels, right? One is the culture of your country, your ethnicity, your religion. But when I speak about high-skilled immigrant women, it's not just that, right? The country culture matters, but then it also matters the culture of the organization. Does it actually value somebody who's a quick decision maker, or somebody who deliberates? If you look at communication styles, some people have circular styles, some people have more direct styles, right? Hierarchy, what is it that is hierarchy respected, or is it a more egalitarian culture? Then you have cultures of professions, a human resources profession versus a finance profession, then versus, let's say, an investment banking profession, in which I'm working a lot at the moment. Then you have personality level culture, that comes from your family. What does your family value? What are the values instilled in you by your caretakers, and how have these evolved, right? So when I use the word culture, it's not just about country. Culture is then at so many levels. So if you're a high-skilled immigrant woman, then you face all of these elements of culture, right? That is, I think, the beauty and the challenge in any kind of work that needs to be done, because a lot of this is unsaid, uncoded, unwritten, so there's so many unwritten rules coming back, to your name of work by your rules. So much of that is not visible. And I think a lot of what Wonder Woman is trying to do is to try to make these things visible. So instead of giving people answers, because there are no easy answers, right? All of this is so complex. What's your unique combination of which country you came from, to which country did you move, and then which profession, and then which culture and organization, and then which personality? So I cannot give formulas. There's no silver bullet. But what I have done in my book is asked you all of these pertinent questions that you can then reflect on for yourself, and then given you stories around how people in their particular context have navigated through that, right? But as I said, the book is more a starting point. It's not something that gives you answers. It's something that asks you very pertinent questions to which you need to find your own answers. And then it gives you a sense of community and not being isolated, and being shown that actually the challenges that you are facing are systemic challenges. They're not linked to you and your boss or you and your organization.
So you mentioned you also have your Thrive community, that's your pro bono work, and you're now creating the Wonder Woman community. How do you see them come together or not? And if women listening are hooked now, they're going to buy your book tomorrow, but also if they'd like to connect more with your work, where would you suggest them to go first?
So private mentoring has got nothing to do with immigration. Private mentoring is a women for women mentoring platform. We exist now in 10 countries. In Switzerland, we are in Zurich, Basel, and Lausanne. But we are in London and Paris, and we just keep going to so many different, Stockholm and Budapest and many European countries. Pre-COVID, we were in 6 cities in India. We'll probably go back to India, but we were in Singapore and Nairobi and Tel Aviv. And it's a very organic organization where, because it's completely volunteer run, wherever there are 3 or 4 volunteers who would come and say, yes, we want to support this whole women to women mentoring cause, we launch a chapter, right? So that's how we are in more than 10 countries now. That if they want to become a mentor or a mentee, go to thriveWithMentoring.com, register for a future launch, or register to be a cohort leader. You want to bring it to your city, you can do that, right? So that's Thrive with Mentoring. It has
there, Shivangi, could I bring it to Geneva, or is Lausanne close enough?
You could bring it to Geneva if there were 3 more women who could join you and start a chapter. Lausanne, we've had it for a while. I think 6 years, 7 years, something like that. So yeah, we chose Lausanne instead of Geneva because Geneva already had so many women's circles going. So we said, let's try. And yes, it is for the Swiss Romandie. Everybody from Geneva and everywhere comes to Lausanne, right? So that really is your prerogative, right? Every year we go to like 7, 8 cities. And sometimes these are, some remain the same and some keep changing every year. So that's Thrive with Mentoring. If you are a mentor, if you are somebody in a professional capacity, more than 15 years of work experience, you can sign up as a mentor. Anything more than 7, 8 years of work experience, you can sign in as a mentee. Having said that, we have plenty of mentees who are more than 15, 18 years of experience. So though it started in a particular way, now it's a mishmash, and there is reverse mentoring, and people sign up as a mentor 1 year and mentee another year, So I think these age limits were to begin with, to think a little bit about, but they are not necessarily followed. Definitely not in Switzerland, where we are seeing the mentee age is in the 40s now rather than in the 30s. Wonder Woman is different. Wonder Woman is a subset that I have seen in Thrive with Mentoring. And as I said, I wrote a book which I would have wanted to read when I first left India and came to Switzerland, because I came with all of these rosy ideas of moving from a so-called developing country to a developed country, right? And not really looking at the challenges. And the people I interview are everywhere. I have interviewed women who have moved from the global south to the global north, So basically moving from a lot of Asian countries, African countries, Latin American countries, going to the US, UK, Switzerland, but also maybe Sweden, Scandinavian countries, or even Australia, right? So none of these demarcations are that clear in my mind. And what I noticed was, though my interview group was not necessarily, let's say, East European women or Russian or Ukrainian women moving to Switzerland or Germany, the challenges are exactly the same. So it is actually, that book is for any high-skilled immigrant woman who is trying to make her professional life better and grow and accelerate it in a foreign country. So you might be, for example, a Swiss person trying to do that in America, and the book will apply to you because so many things in the book apply to you. So I think that that's something that we really have to take into account, that those factors remain quite similar, challenges remain quite similar. And yeah, find more if you just go on my website, shivangivalke.com, you will find the link to the book and get a copy of the book and start a conversation.
Excellent. And there's also a way to sign up for a newsletter, because you mentioned you have more up in the pipeline, so there will be more coming.
Very much, very much. So if you join on, again, my website so shivangivalke.com/wonderwoman, you join the author community. And then once you join the book author community, you'll be invited to like book readings, a masterclass, and eventually all the other initiatives that I would come up with. This book is rather new. I published it just pre-summer. And now I'm like going back into elements. I'm going to launch something called as a Wonder Woman Mastermind. This is for a very specific set of women who want to reinvent themselves in community. It's for women who would be who want a longish space to hold them, where we will use the conversation topics are going to be topics in the book. But the experience that I bring is about coaching senior level leadership women, right? So that's the Wonder Woman Mastermind. But as I said, there'll be other ways. There will be book readings, there will be masterclasses, and there will be retreats. So all of this is sort of coming in Q4 and 2026.
Amazing. Great. So we covered a lot of different topics. Before we move into the quick fire burst questions, is there anything else you feel like you're burning to share with the audience? Anything else that we haven't touched on yet?
Well, I'll only repeat what I said. I mean, having gone on that journey myself from moving from corporate to start my own business and reinventing myself in my own business, and now doing a lot of work with founders and with people who want to, start and go on that journey, connect with me, because that is something that I am very passionate about. And I'm working with a lot of founders, especially those who are transitioning from corporate to start their own business, right? And it's gender agnostic. It's not just linked to women.
Okay, great. So with that, Shivangi, you're ready for the quick fire burst questions. It cuts the challenge. And I said, the idea is to answer in one word, in one sentence, to be concise, and sticking to one word is almost impossible. But anyway, the challenge is on. So what is one belief you had to drop to live your way?
Imposter syndrome is not real.
Of it, yeah. A place that cracked something open in you.
Mount Koyasan.
See, that's the challenge with those questions. Now I want to know more. That's Japan, right? No.
Yeah.
I think I went there too. Is that where you have all the monasteries? No?
Something got to do with that too. We should talk about it.
Yeah, I went there over Christmas. It was amazing. It was really just before Christmas. It was really cold, but that made it really special. So one thing you had to unlearn.
That's a good one. I think I'm still unlearning that there is a limit to one's potential.
Okay, you're unlearning there's a limit. So there's no limit.
There's no limit.
I love it. You're non-negotiable right now.
Energy. I only do work that gives me energy.
I love that. It's a good non-negotiable. The boldest risk that you took and that paid off.
I think stepping out of corporate.
Yeah, that's scary. And it's so worth it, right? I mean, seeing all the amazing things you're doing.
Oh yeah, it's so worth it. But every time you still question yourself, because this whole damn security, or again, illusion of security that corporate offers is very seductive.
Absolutely. Okay, this is going a tiny bit off the one word answer, but I remember when I changed into humanitarian work, I had this illusion of I'm leaving corporate security. And actually one of my friends who at the time worked at McKinsey said like, but you know what, we can be all laid off tomorrow. So it's a total illusion. So even if you have the fixed term, long term, whatever contract, that could be gone tomorrow. So yeah, just let go of that illusion, right?
It's as I said, it's the illusion of control. We're not in control. It's just the illusion.
Yeah. Wow. So one word for your leadership or your life in this chapter.
Reinvention.
I love it. And what is the ripple you would like your story to create? What's the legacy you want to leave?
Become more of yourself.
This is so inspiring. Thank you so much, Shivangi. So thanks a lot for playing along with those questions. I know it's not easy. So as we wrap this up, for someone listening and who's ready to wander off the beaten track, is there one tip how to get started? One first small step people could do?
One small step I think you can do, and I believe a lot in that, is the power of writing things down. Because there are certain phases in our life where we feel very inspired to take action. Unfortunately, our mind is a little bit of villain, if I can say that, and it comes and tells you why everything is not possible, right? So if you just keep that moment of inspiration in your mind, it will fade away. So if you are feeling inspired, I would say just write it down and take one baby step in that direction. I mean, even writing it down is one baby step in that direction, right? And then take the next step in that direction, which might be just having a conversation with a mentor, with a friend, with a former boss, whoever, with your partner, with even your children. Sometimes I have an almost 18-year-old, and it's fascinating for me to have some of these conversations around, for example, AI and what I've been thinking about in terms of how AI is changing the world. And as an 18-year-old, he brings in such a different perspective on that, right? So small steps. And for me, the smallest step, low risk that you can take is to write down things. Write down your hopes, write down your visions, maybe even write down your fears, right? Because as soon as you place all of that outside of you, you can actually see it rather than it being all muddly and, sort of all confusing and, sort of all interacting with each other in the head, right? Then it's not clear. So I have really found that when I write things down, they become more clear and I can delineate them. So I would always say, and it's such a small step, right? It's so low risk. You don't need to show it to anybody.
That's such a fantastic tip. And I encourage all listeners to do that. And it's funny, I just finished a book by Daniel Priestley, The Entrepreneur Revolution, and he gives like 10 tips what to do. But 2 of the tips are exactly what you just said.
Oh, really? I must read that book.
And part of his whole business model is to give his books for free for a while on Audible. So this one is just finished being, but anyway, it's a couple of francs and it's really worth it. So one of the tips was indeed to always have a notebook at hand, so you can just download the ideas, and then to have 3 conversations per week, like random conversations where you don't have an agenda, you just explore. So I'm
that's
now
so fantastic. I love and I live that idea, but I don't do it. Maybe I should do it more often. Every November, which is my birthday month, I offer 25-minute conversations to random people on my LinkedIn. They're always booked out. I've been doing that for 5 years. And those are some of the most amazing conversations I have. They tend to know me. I tend not to know them. And I'm almost like a stranger to them, right? Or they are definitely strangers to me. And they tell me, some of their deepest challenges that they have not worded out, that they've just kept it in their heads. And all kinds of people from, all places in the world, Egypt and Tanzania, and it's just amazing.
I love that concept.
Soon launch that again. I look forward to every November.
So you offer a certain number of 20-minute slots up for grabs. That is such an amazing concept. I love that.
Yeah, I offer it on my LinkedIn and they're always gone.
So great. Well, Shivangi, that was such an inspiration on all levels. I've taken a lot of great ideas away from this. I hope listeners did too. So yeah, just really.
Thank you, Maggie. You're a very great conversationalist. Keep up with this. Keep doing this.
I'm enjoying this. I don't know how many people are already listening, but from the people that give me feedback, they enjoy. So I'll keep going as long as I hope we can inspire people out there.
Yes, it's so needed in today's world, with these kind of conversations. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.
That's it for today. If this stirred something in you, don't just sit on it. Do something, anything, today, right now. Take one small intentional step toward more freedom, flow, and fun. And see where the ride takes you. If this hit home, follow the show, share it with a friend, or leave a review. That's how we ripple this energy further. Want to go deeper? Head over to mindset/mastery.ch for coaching, tools, and next steps. Until next time, trust your gut, stay curious, and keep playing by your rules. Bye for now.